Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Weesey.
Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. I am pumped to bring you today's show because I am recapping SEMA 2019. I'm going to tell you a couple of things that I learned at SEMA, and honestly, a few of them blew my mind and really shocked me. So I'm going to break all that down in a little bit. But first, there's a few things I need to tell you about, and I want to start with 4-Wheel Parts. They had an amazing setup at SEMA. So Smittybilt, Trans-American Auto Parts, 4-Wheel Parts, the whole lineup, some crazy builds. There was one that the Diesel Brothers did that was just, I don't even know how to describe it. It was a truck with tracks, and it had ATVs on a custom rack with tracks, and it was all it was just nuts. But I got to give a shout out to the 4-Wheel Parts team for putting together just a great setup, great booth. Another thing that they've done recently here is publish their holiday gift guide. So if you're trying to figure out how to either spend some money on yourself or some things for friends, check it out, holiday gift guide. They got sale items and then best sellers on there, so you can check those things out. And it's kind of nice. They broke it down. Like if you only want to spend $50, there's a section for gifts under $50 and so on. So it's pretty cool. You can always send me gifts. I will accept gifts for $1 or less, or free or less. Speaking of gifts, actually the best gift that you could give me is if you headed over to Apple Podcasts and left a rating or review. That would be awesome. That is what this show needs to stay alive, stay strong, keep bringing in listeners. So that would be great if you could do that. And whatever podcast player you use, subscribe that we don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And I need to give a shout out to a couple of other awesome companies that make this show possible. AMSOIL, they provide amazing lubrication products, and they're a company that runs on freedom. You can find out more at amsoil.com/rider. It's funny, every time I say that, I actually do the slash mark with my hand, even when I'm just in the basement by myself. But whatever, /rider. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology and are ready to rescue your race. And they were at SEMA as well and rocked it out there in their booth. TopThePodium.com, experts in motorsport sponsorship and website creation. Bold Racing, their family desert UTV race team. And then Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. And speaking of High Octane Coffee, Joe Sylvester was at SEMA as well with his brand new monster truck, and it is ridiculous. I almost don't want to tell you too much about it. I want you to go look at it, but it is like right up my alley for monster trucks, or I guess just trucks in general. But so yeah, go check out his Instagram, Joe Sylvester 8, or at High Octane Coffee. You can see that. And right now, you are going to hear from Joe Sylvester of High Octane Coffee as he gives you a tidbit of sponsorship advice. And this is what we like to call the High Octane Coffee Marketing Tune-Up.
What's up, everybody? Joe Sylvester here with your High Octane Coffee Marketing Tune-Up of the day. Today, I want to talk about a little bit of homework. Doing your homework on a company before you even think about approaching them for a sponsorship. That's a big, big thing. You need to understand the company and a little bit about what they're all about and what their marketing strategies and tactics are before you even approach them. Make sure that they align with what you're doing and make sure that you're going to be able to bring something to the table for them. Check up on their social media. Look at maybe who else they're sponsoring. See how you fit into the picture and absolutely use their product. Even if you just try it for the first time, make sure it's something that you believe in, something that you feel confident in endorsing. So definitely, before approaching a company, do your homework, research that company, and learn as much as you possibly can about them so you can have an intelligent conversation with them when you finally do reach that marketing executive to talk to them about sponsoring your race program.
All right, well, now it's time to get into the show. And it's funny, I just went back and listened to the intro that I recorded. And wow, I said High Octane Coffee quite a bit. But that's cool. I met Joe, and he helped me out with a couple of things at the show, and he's just such a fun guy. I've been working with him for a while now, too, so it's okay to say High Octane Coffee about 1,000,000 times. I feel good about it, but it was just funny listening to it. I was like, wow, I really hammered that one home. But, hey, speaking of hammering stuff home, I really want to hammer home the experience that I had at SEMA 2019 this year. I got to go with Eaton. Eaton is that's my day job. I manage the proving grounds there. I've talked a little bit about it on the show before, but it was pretty cool. I got to go with them and help them capture some content. Joe Sylvester helped me out with some content for them. Blake Wilkie did, a couple other folks. So it's really cool. Awesome people. I just want to give them another quick shout out. Now, I was only there at SEMA for 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, and I flew out Thursday. So I couldn't see everything, but I saw quite a bit. And I'm actually going to tell you a little bit of how much walking I did when I get to it. But there's a lot to see, and a lot of things that I learned, honestly. Some things were quite shocking, and I'm just going to kind of break down some of those things. I essentially got 5 sections I want to talk about here, and probably the most shocking one for me was section 4. So I don't know why I put it in slot 4 instead of 1 or 5 or whatever, but section 4, that's the one that's most shocking. So when we get there after the break, we'll talk about it. So you got to hang out now till that part of the show. I mean, I guess you could fast forward to that too, but you would never do that. So either way, here's a couple things that I learned here. The first one is, honestly, you just can't comprehend how massive this event is. So it's at the Las Vegas Convention Center, which when I hear convention center, I'm thinking like, all right, cool, it's a big building, maybe a couple of big rooms. But no, this is like 40 million rooms, and it spans outside. There's multiple lots. There's multiple skid pads that people are doing, pretty intense activities on. Like Hoonigan was out there ripping it up. Ford had a big exhibit out there. They were jumping Raptors around, and skidding Mustangs all over the place. Just massive. There's about 1 trillion booths set up. Just a ton of stuff going on there. People told me, they said, hey, whatever you expect, it's bigger. Like however big you think it might be, it's going to be way bigger than that. And it's true. So I was floating around a lot, trying to cover a lot of ground, getting a lot of different content, getting some footage and interviews and stuff like that for Eaton. And it was just, well, to put in perspective, I don't know the exact calculation. I took my number of steps, figured out what my height is, and there's a little calculator that you can do to figure out how many miles you walk. But I walked 22 miles in 2 days, which is, that's a lot. A lot of walking, but it was awesome just to get to see all that. But when I think of big, too, and obviously there's the thing I just talked about, just a large area, a lot of companies everywhere, but the companies there across the board invested significantly into making sure that their brand was what they wanted it to be. Eaton obviously had their branding and their message that I helped with, but every single company there had such a specific focus and a very significant investment, whether it's resources or custom builds or, influencers in their booth doing signings, or, there's multiple podcast studios that were like, fully soundproofed and enclosed where people doing shows. Just a massive investment. And it reminded me, honestly, about how big the industry really is. Sometimes I look around like, oh, well, it seems like everybody kind of knows everybody. It seems like the industry is just limited, right? But goodness gracious, going there, I was just like, it's just way bigger than I could think. And there's a lot of new entries to it. Honestly, the overland world, which we've even talked about on the show a few times, that has blown up in SEMA as well. I mean, you can't go 20 steps without seeing a vehicle with, a tent on the top or some sort of camping gear hanging off of it. Really cool builds too. So you can tell that companies are embracing that growth, which I think, from when I talk about motorsports marketing and sponsorship on the show, a lot of that is racing, which has a few bigger barriers to entry. But overlanding is not quite as big of a barrier to entry. So I think companies are embracing that. Yeah, we can all enjoy motorsports and get out there. You don't necessarily have to be a racer to really get out there and push your vehicles and have a good time. So that was pretty exciting to me, but just the sheer volume of people there. I mean, it was like bumper to bumper. Well, I shouldn't say bumper to bumper. It was like shoulder to shoulder the whole time there. It was hard to even take like video or pictures or something without somebody walking in between it. I was literally doing some video interviews, and people were just like walking behind the person I was interviewing. Very obvious what we were doing, just boop, right behind. But just to reiterate this point, it just showed me how many companies were out there and willing to invest in, their branding and their image. And that's what we're all about as sponsored riders and racers, is helping companies achieve their goals with their marketing, with their branding. So it was kind of reassuring to think that, the industry is pretty strong right now, and I think that it's still got some room for growth. Yeah. So that's my main kind of takeaway, point one here, is just the sheer size of it and how it made me feel about the size of the industry overall. The second thing that I want to cover, and this will be the last one before I take a quick break to thank the sponsors for the podcast. There are meetings constantly at SEMA. It's an opportunity for so many people to come together in one spot that a lot of companies actually, build their booths such that they have a little conference room inside their booth that is either private. Some of them were a little bit more open, but a lot of them just had tables that were just there and people could sit down and have meetings. Almost every single booth had that. And the intent was, for maybe it's distributors, maybe it's sponsored riders and racers, maybe it's companies that were thinking about partnering with one another. Lots of opportunities for those meetings. And I wasn't really expecting that. I've been to trade shows and things like that before, nothing to this scale, but I wasn't really expecting like the sit down meetings to be happening on such a frequent basis. But it makes really good sense because there are so many people at SEMA at one time, and it's just a good time to let's get together, let's collaborate, let's figure out some things. So that was pretty neat, and that was something I didn't know was going to be there. And I really want to emphasize this too. It was meetings all day, so people would meet during the normal show times, but people would meet before the show times. There were meetings after, like the show itself officially closed at 5 p.m., but a lot of people stayed much later, whether it was little after parties or little celebrations or, official meetings, or people would go out to dinners and have meetings, or go to hotel offices and have meetings, all around the central goal of we want to work together, we want to collaborate, we want to figure out how we can, make more money, get a better return on investment, whatever it is across the board. So many people were engaging in it, and I just wasn't expecting that. And I thought it was pretty neat. I thought it was a good use of the space and the time, considering that so many people were in one spot at the same time. So you can get a lot done with face-to-face meetings at something like SEMA. All right, I have 3 more points I want to cover with you before we kind of wrap up the show. But right now, I'm going to break and take a minute to thank the sponsors for this podcast.
Hey guys, George Hamill here to talk about SolderWeld's new off-road repair kit. If you're a racer of any type or an off-road enthusiast like myself, you're going to want to take a close look at this product that bonds metal on the spot. SolderWeld has combined some of their most elite products into one small kit that fits perfectly under your seat or strapped to a roll cage and allows you to make some insane fixes anywhere you go. How many of us have been in a race or out on the trail and got a rock chip in a radiator or brake line? We have seen a top-tier desert race team at the 2019 Min 400 taken out by a simple rock to the radiator. If they had an off-road repair kit on board, they could have been back up and running in just minutes. The kit includes everything you need to work on dirty aluminum, stainless steel, copper, and many other metals. SolderWeld's cutting-edge technology allows you to make these fixes with extremely low heat and incredibly high tensile strength, leaving you a lasting fix every time. Don't be that guy broke down on the side of the trail. Get your off-road repair kit today, and your friends will thank you.
Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out CrashAddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority. When I stop to think about all the things that make motorsports awesome, I think of camaraderie, I think of speed, I think of friendship, and I also think of family. And it's hard to go through all of those elements without thinking of Bold Racing. Now, Bold Racing and Jimmy Moore, the owner, has been a long time supporter of this show and Impact Fuel overall. Jimmy Moore is a desert racer that also has a ton of experience with suspension, UTV axles, and general go fastness. I would love for you to head over to their Facebook page, Bold Racing, or their Instagram page, bold.racing, and just show them some love. Let them know that you support their race program and you want to see them continue to promote the amazing elements of motorsports. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you gotta check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club Podcast website is SponsoredRiderClubPodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanestal of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content. That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to TopThePodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Let's talk about your truck for a minute. You can count on it to haul your vehicle and your gear to the track or to the trailhead, but I bet you never think about the motor oil. Here's why you should. Your oil is the only thing preventing your engine from wearing out and breaking down. To keep your truck running strong, look for an oil with added wear protection. Like, for example, AMSOIL Signature Series Synthetic Motor Oil. It delivers 75% more engine protection against horsepower loss and wear than is required by the leading industry standard. It provides the next level protection today's demanding engines need to keep running for years and to keep effortlessly towing your ride to the track. Go to AMSOIL.com/rider to find out more. Make the switch to AMSOIL synthetic motor oil today to keep your vehicle running great. All right, welcome back. We have just a few more points to cover here about the things that I learned at SEMA 2019. I'm on point 3 now. I told you the exciting one was point 4, but or at least the most shocking one for me. I'm building it up now. Once you get there, you're probably like, all right, great, that was the big deal. But either way, for number 3 here, I knew this happened, but I guess I didn't see it very often face to face. People obviously tell me on the show, like, hey, this is how I made a connection. It was at a trade show. Someone walked up to me and made a pitch. But it is straight crazy. So I was with a couple of different influencers throughout the day that I just kind of bumped into. I'm actually going to go through the whole list, and once I get to point 5 of everybody that I saw and everybody that's there. But there was multiple times where I would be talking to somebody and like either they would be in a meeting, similar to my point that I was talking to point 2, that like there's just meetings everywhere. Like they'd be in a meeting and then kind of like, oh, hey, what's up, man? They're like, hey, what's going on? But there would be companies that would walk up to influencers and just start pitching their product. Like they were hardcore trying to sell the product for free to some of these influencers. One example that I'll give was with Light Bright Studios. So if you haven't heard of Light Bright Studios, really cool YouTube channel, husband and wife combo, and they're super sharp. They've done a really good job putting some content together. So I was talking with them, and their names are Brittany and Kevin Williams. And we were just having like a kind of a random conversation. And this other company comes up, and they're like, hey, what's up, guys? We follow your channel. We've been paying attention to you, and we know that you struggle with something. I won't say the details because then you might figure out what company it was, and I don't know if they want to talk about that. So they said, hey, I know that you all struggle with this, and you might not like this. We think we have a solution for you. That we could do this with our product, and we think it would fit really well with your brand and what you're trying to do. And Kevin and Brittany were like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'd like to know more. But right now, I'm busy with something, or we're having this conversation, so we'll take your cards and we'll look into it. But it was, a very interesting situation. And I know that people have talked about this on the show to me before. I just really haven't seen it in person because, these companies are actively seeking influencers, like hardcore. This is just one example. I saw numerous ones throughout the day, and when I talked to a lot of the business owners and builders and things like that, they're looking for influencers to spread the name of whatever they're doing. It's a challenge still, which I'm shocked with how many influencers that are out there, how many riders and racers. I think companies still struggle to find who's that right person. And even the people, they struggle to figure out who's the right companies. I mean, at a certain point, if you get, popular enough, get enough of a following, maybe win enough races where a lot of people are paying attention to you, you're even more attractive to these other companies. And like, they want to work with you and they're going to pitch to you. Like that's where you want to be at, right? If you can, be strong enough in whatever it is that you're doing. Let's say if you are a racer and you're good enough at that, you've got the social media presence, you are doing the events and just crushing it. Companies might just be crawling, trying to get your attention. And, you still have to show all these levels of respect and do all the hard work. Like you still got to make all that stuff happen. But at that point, you might struggle to figure out and decide which companies you actually want to work with. So that was really interesting to me. It felt like there was a shortage in walking around of influencers. So that's point 3. And I wasn't completely shocked by that, but I guess I wasn't sure how aggressive companies were being. And, after walking around, I could see they're aggressive. They're trying to find good partners, which is reassuring. I mean, that's why we listen to the show, is we want to become good partners. But that kind of leads me into my next point here. And maybe it's why at SEMA I saw this kind of disparity of companies really wanting to find the right influencer. So point 4, the big one, let's do the drum roll here. Some influencers want nothing to do with sponsors. Zero. Absolutely are not interested in a sponsorship. Now, I had to do some thinking, but I came across several people that I talked to, whether they're builders or part of a company that does builds or whatever it may be, that they said, I don't want to be tied down by a sponsor. And that shocked me. I was thinking, who would think that? Now, I actually, quite honestly, I have done a show in the past, and I've talked about it a little bit where, sponsorship might not be right for everybody because it does come with a decent amount of work, and, maybe you're not able to put in that time, to reap those benefits, or, maybe it's just not something you're that into. I guess, so I've, to an extent, I knew that, but there were people that were adamantly against it, even to the point where I was just chatting with people and asking them, have you worked with any partners on this build? They're like, no, and why would you offend me by asking me that? So I'll kind of break down my theory of why that might be, because it seemed like that happened with folks who were extreme perfectionists and also more focused on the artistry of whatever they were building. Because quite honestly too, if you walk around that show, there's sponsored logos all over the place. So plenty of people are comfortable with it, but there's some where you could not find any indication of who their partners might have been, if there were any at all. Zero indication. And we're talking, 3, 4, 5, $600,000 cars, $1 million, $2 million cars. Just absolutely crazy. But I did get some insights from people, and I think I understand it a little bit better. So some of the insights and the trends that I heard were, they didn't want to be tied down. They wanted to have full creative freedom over what parts that they were going to use. And they felt that if they were linked to a contract or a sponsor, that they would feel limited. That they couldn't change direction on a dime, or that they couldn't really test and use and change the products that they wanted to make their build exactly right. I mean, we're talking about, there was one person out there that I talked to, he did 65 wet sands and coats on his car to get the paint exactly right. Now, I've only done some really amateur painting, and let's just say, from my experience, that's a lot. But he was a perfectionist, and his car showed it. And so my theory is that for some of these folks that are just very obsessed with the art and the detail, they might not really want to be tied down by a sponsor, whether it's the work or what else. I don't know. They don't want that. They want to keep that creative freedom, and that means more to them than, the relief that a sponsorship might provide in terms of financial burden reduction. So, wow, I really overcomplicated that. I think that they're looking at it and say, I'd rather just pay the extra money and get exactly what I want and not have to go through anything else that could take away my creative energy. So that was kind of one of my theories that I built off of that. The next one was more obvious. People sometimes want to run competing brands on their builds because certain elements are what they want and certain ones are not. So one person broke it down specifically for me, where they said, I don't remember what parts they said at this point, but they basically said, if I want to run this, we'll just say a winch. I'm going to make up a little bit of scenario just to convey the point because my memory is horrible. I want to run this winch, but I want to run, a different set of wheels, but the winch company also makes wheels. So if I were to partner with the winch company, which I really like, then I can't use the wheels that I want to. And they're like, I don't want that issue to come up. And honestly, some people said, hey, if a sponsor is willing to have parts on the car that compete with other parts in the car, that's also sponsored, like whatever, then I'm open to it. But basically said I'd rather just fund it myself and not have to even think about that. So that's pretty interesting. For me, obviously, I've done the show and I'm trying to promote people to be stronger performers, I guess, in the motorsports marketing and sponsorship scene. So obviously, I believe in sponsorship, and I think it can be a really good avenue to get the builds done that you want, get the racing status that you need, and overall build the brand the way you want to. I think it's very important. And I think the partnerships are a blast to have. But I get it. Like, I understand what they're trying to say here. Where they don't want that extra person, dictating what their build is going to look like. I even heard some stories from people as I was walking around where a business had worked with a builder, and the builder at some point, received financial aid or parts or something, and turned around and did what they wanted to anyways. Either didn't incorporate the logo or didn't incorporate the part the way they had wanted to. So it's pretty strong. And I just noticed it a little bit more on some of these, really high art focused pieces, that were there. There were some other crazy, beautiful things. Like, let's say the truck build that I mentioned earlier that the Diesel Brothers did for 4-Wheel Parts. It was plastered with logos and it was amazing. It looked phenomenal. So I don't want this message to be misconstrued like you can't have a piece of art while also having sponsorship. I'm just saying that there's some people out there that say, I don't want to even go through the additional mental energy to have a sponsor on board that I have to run ideas past, and it could be different from what I would just do on my own. So either way, that was the most intriguing thing for me to discover and kind of see happen there. I've not come across that nearly as strong before. People have made comments to me in the past about it, but that was just much stronger than I expected. Yeah. So the last point I want to hit on here is just about reiterating how everyone is there. It's my first time going. I wish that I'd gone in the past. I'd like to go again in the future. It is open to the public. There are people outside that get to walk around and look at cars, and you don't have to have the same credentials. There's people inside that do have certain credentials, and then there's exhibitors and buyers, and everybody has these different access levels. But once you're in there, it's a madhouse of activity, and I love the energy. Everybody there is excited about the cars, the trucks, the UTVs, the different technologies out there. It's a really fun atmosphere. But another thing that I thought was really fun, I said everyone is there, but there's a lot of the top influencers out there in motorsports. Some really important people, and they're just walking around. You just bump into people, which I thought was pretty neat. I got starstruck a couple times, which is it happens. But I'm just gonna go through a list of a couple people. There's 2 of these people that I did not actually see. Everybody else I did, and I kind of either snuck a picture or, did a little bit of fanboy, and yeah, it is what it is. But so one of them was Patrick Dempsey. So he's big in the motorsports world. So he was there. I did not see him. One of my colleagues took a little a sneaky selfie with him, which I got to see. So that was pretty cool. Goldberg was there. He does a CarCast podcast with Adam Carolla. Adam Carolla had a booth there too, a podcast booth. I didn't see him, but I think he was there. But yeah, it was crazy. I was walking by with some random stranger that I was becoming friends with because that's what I do. And we were both like, what? Is that Goldberg? So that was pretty neat. Ken Block. Saw Ken Block twice. One time at a signing session. So he was in a booth. And he was signing there for an hour, which is pretty popular there. They have booths set up, and then they'll have, racers or influencers come in, sign for a half hour, or something like that. So he was there. I saw him there, and then I also saw him later on out at the Hoonigan, I can't remember what they called, like the drift pad, or I don't know. It was a really cool outdoor activity that they had. So I saw him there as well. I saw Travis Pastrana, accidentally at night. He was walking around looking at some trucks, and I was like, "Hey, Travis," and then that was it. I didn't know what else to do, but yeah, that was pretty cool seeing him. I had met him once before at Vegas Reno in 2017, so it's kind of cool seeing him again. But yeah, he was just walking around at night, checking out some of the other trucks. There's a few people kind of lingering around, and he was one of them, so that was neat. Jim Beaver was there, so he's been on the show a number of times. So he was at the Rigid Industries kind of like after party where a bunch of people got together. Tiffany Stone was there as well. She's been on the show a number of times, so that was really cool meeting her. I've been wanting to meet her for a while. We actually live in the same state, but we've never met before. Joe Sylvester, I mentioned him earlier, so he was there. Got to see his new monster truck and talk to him. I did a little interview with him for some different content. I saw, Kevin and Brittany from Light Bright Studios, and they're awesome people, super sharp. Brad Kowitz was there from Trail Recon, but I didn't get to meet him. I saw his Jeep, took a picture of it. We were texting back and forth, but we never quite found each other. But he was there. Rob Spencer, Adventure the Wild, randomly bumped into him. I was like, "Hey, Rob, what's up, man?" He's like, "Oh my gosh." Similarly, Ken Farley from Ken's Car Care, who's on the show too, also known as Dr. Death Wobble. I found him by looking at his Insta stories, and then I saw he had a crazy shirt on, and then I saw the shirt. It's just crazy with how many people that were there. I mean, you literally wouldn't think that you could find anybody ever, but kept finding them. Blake Wilkie was there, and he helped me out with some content. So that was pretty cool. He's just such a fun guy, and he's so helpful. I don't even know how. Yeah, he's so helpful. Antron Brown was there doing some signatures. There was a bunch of other racers there that I couldn't see at the time, but I know Antron, and I don't know Antron. I know what he looks like. I could pick him out of a crowd in a heartbeat, and he was there, and it was pretty cool. He was doing some selfies with some people, and that was awesome. I definitely did some fanboy stuff over Chip Foose, because I've used to pay attention to his builds, and back in the day I haven't paid attention as much lately, but he's just a legendary car builder, and he was there doing an interview for a guy that I had just interviewed, and I was like, yeah, man, I kind of feel like I interviewed Chip Foose, even though I didn't. But yeah, hung around him, kind of floated. I don't know if you could stalked is probably the wrong word, but floated around him for 10, 15 minutes. I think he was doing judging or something, but that was cool seeing him. So we got to see some of his cars there. Jay Leno was walking around. I did not see him. My colleagues did. They snapped some pictures. RJ Anderson was there. That was cool. I didn't get to talk to him. I just barely missed him. And then about a million other people. Some of them I didn't even list here that I knew. There's a bunch of people that I was messaging that I never could find, or they were messaging me and we couldn't find them. But it was just a lot of fun. A lot of people there. I really highly encourage, if you get an opportunity in the future, to go, especially if a vehicle or something you've built is featured. I forgot 4x4 Barbie and David Fisher. So they were both there. I got to hang out with them quite a bit, actually. They were with Travis Pastrana for a little bit, and then they actually had 3 trucks there between the two of them, I think. So inside and outside, I ran into them both times. So that was good. I got to spend a lot of time with David. He's a super sharp individual, so it was great talking with them. But yeah, so that was it. I just wanted to kind of highlight those 5 things that kind of stood out to me at SEMA. I honestly wanted to grab some content while I was there, get some interviews there, and I was focused on some other things, never got to that. And then when I got back to my hotel room, I was like, I'm going to record episodes and like recap each day, and I just was spent from walking around, and I was exhausted mentally because there's just so much going on. You can't keep up with it all. So I actually took me like another day to recover from all of the madness. And I'm not a partier either, so I wasn't doing anything crazy. I just was like spent. But either way, got this episode out here. I can't wait to get it out in the world. But at this point, I'm going to leave you with this. Have fun and ride safe. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by 4-Wheel Parts. I want you to make sure that you are subscribed to this show, whether it's on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss upcoming guests and upcoming episodes. And then follow us on social media. We're on all of the platforms. You can find out the most content, though, on our Facebook page. That's where we do our live videos. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, you can also check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. It is a support network where you can ask questions about best practices and get feedback from our audience. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, 4-Wheel Parts, AMSOIL, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, and Crash Addict Industries. And I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and High Octane Coffee. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.